Hey everyone, welcome to Encounters USA. If it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or Dogman you're looking for, you came to the right place. Now listen up as we listen to some of the latest encounters.
Well, there's a few of us that were. See, I'm not in that community, and so I don't have I'm not going to get fired because I participated in a study about Bigfoot DNA.
And that's what the issue was. People are going to get fired for participating.
Basically, the scientists that were on her team, the other scientists, the scientific world. If you go against whatever the dogma is, whatever especially you're in, there's a chosen reality, and this is what we accept. And if you go too far outside that bounds, it's more like a religion. It's science. It's science. What is it called? Scientism. It's not really science. It's a religion. And if you go outside their dogma, then they're vicious. They'll take your position away from you. They'll take your livelihood away from you. You can't get published. You can't get jobs. They'll blackball you. And you're working at Walmart. Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened was with the other people on the team, Dr. Ketchum, he'd already started coming, and she told everybody, because several of these people had already been published and had prestigious positions. So she said, it's all right for you guys just to fade into the background, so to speak. I'll be the front person for it. And you guys can just avoid the media. And you've done, you contributed your thing, you said, and you've done your thing, you can go on. And I can't blame them for not, sticking their necks out. These people, it all comes back around to, we all got families to feed.
Yeah.
And that's where they always hit people, everybody thinks, I'll stand up for it, no matter what. And then, when you've got, two kids to feed,
mortgage.
And they threaten to, remove your ability to feed your children, things change. And that's kind of, that's what happened to several of the scientists, that, worked on the study. The thing that's very interesting, some of the people throw out this misinformation. Well, I contacted the scientists and they said they didn't know what I was talking about and they weren't involved in the study or they didn't, they wouldn't reply to me. And my reply to that is, and it's a very interesting, one of the people that are co-authors that she's got their picture and they're associated with the study have sued Dr. Ketchum. Not yet. Now think about it. If Dr. Ketchum lied about you, falsified data and said you produced data that you didn't, used your likeness and picture and your credentials on a paper, and you didn't do it, especially Sasquatch, would you not sue her butt off? Mm-hmm. You'd sue her. No lawsuits, not one, and there won't ever be one. The other thing is she had all the authors, in order for her to publish, had to read and sign off on the paper, which she has, their signatures, and they also had to sign a copyright waiver, which they signed. So they, they can deny and I don't blame them. I probably would too. But, the bottom line is, they did participate. They were real and their data was real, or, these other things would be happening. There'd be lawsuits, there'd be public denials, et cetera, et cetera. So, same thing with the laboratories. There were 13 labs used in double-blind studies. Not one lab has sued her. Not one lab has come out and made a public statement saying, number one, we didn't get the samples. Number two, we didn't test the samples. Number three, we never sent her any results. Because, Melba's got them dead to rights because, number one, she's got the contract, she's got the payment, she's got the receipt. So, and these labs are in a hard spot because if they go out and admit, hey, we really screwed these samples up and it's contamination, well, then they screwed themselves. One of the labs was a crime lab from Louisiana that does, processes samples for the state, puts people in prison. So they can't come back and say, oh, we screwed this up. Our methods are flawed. the lawyers would have a field day. So they just kind of have to eat it and be quiet and say, yeah, we did the samples, and yeah, that's how they came back.
Wow.
And so, you got UCLA, you got North Carolina, the whole list of labs and what they, but the bottom line is, all these different groups, then they tried to spin the narrative. And when you do a misinformation campaign, what you do is you isolate the individual.
Yeah. Because
most people, don't want to believe in, a group. If a group of people do something, it's a lot harder to convince people, there were shenanigans going on.
Yeah.
But if you can isolate one individual and say, well, was it just this one person, and they falsified, then it's a whole lot easier to swallow. So what they did is, of course, they isolated Dr. Ketchum. It became, instead of the Sasquatch genome study, it became the what? The Melba Ketchum study. Mm-hmm. It was Melba, and then they began to propagate the lie that only she processed the samples, which was another lie. And then another lie was, oh, the shit, they are all contaminated. All these, when the results would come back as novel and kind of weird as they were, there were two things. Either the results were right and we got some really strange DNA, or it was contaminated. Well, all your mainstream scientists went and jumped right to it has to be contaminated. Even if she had the proof that, it wasn't contaminated, the samples were clean, and the sequencer gave Q scores of pure samples. The labs, of course, were blind studied. So, if the lab screwed it up, then we've got 13 labs across the country that are, doing shoddy work. So, but it didn't really matter. They would just say, well, it's contaminated. And then they move on.
Yep.
They'd shrug it off. That was their, that was what they used to kind of try to, just squash the study.
No credible evidence.
That was important. That's why they had to isolate her and discredit her so they could say the whole study was bunk. That was classic. It's a classic. I mean, whatever your political affiliation is, that's what they, it's kind of what they're doing with Donald Trump or any other political figure. If you can't attack the facts, you attack the individual. You discredit the individual.
Well, that's the Lee Harvey syndrome. And
yeah.
What better scapegoat? I mean, there's so many parallels to history. This is like the Salem witch trials. You don't have some goofy, geeky scientist, sitting there saying, "Oh, I've got this DNA," and these haploids. You have this rock star looking, young blonde woman out there that's very easy to see, remember, and identify with. And I firmly believe that a lot of people were afraid that if she was taken as credible, she would have taken away a lot from people who are established in the field. And how long do you think Finding Bigfoot would have been around when you can have Dr. Melba Ketchum, out talking about Bigfoot, whatever. So, yeah, I think there was probably, some of that motive in there. But I think just the fact that she's this woman with a Southern accent. What's she doing having a PhD, and what's she doing messing in our area? We're big time hunters and, we're out in the woods all the time, and she's in a lab all the time. How does she have the right to do any of this? So that's just.
I think there was a little bit of good old boy, and even from the mainstream science looking down the nose, we're not going to let a Texas veterinarian and a bunch of rednecks running around the woods from America make this, discovery.
Yep.
Probably one of the most profound discoveries of the century.
Yep.
That ain't going to happen. No. When you look it up in the history books, her picture with Bubba sitting there with a pot belly is not what we want to see.
Yeah.
Seriously. My personal opinion, that was a lot of some of the motivation of why they just could not allow this. Could not allow it.
All right, Scott. So you touched on this gentleman that shot the Bigfoot before, and then he went onto the offensive about Melba. And when I did my last interview with Robin, I spoke incorrectly, and I said that he had altered DNA I was just trying to get to the point of the thing, and the issue was that he had some blood on his boot, and that he alleges that she had called him up and told him to do this or do that, to destroy it, whatever, which would have been altering the study and would have been almost fraud. I mean, and so why would she do that? And my question is, do you? And I know you don't know the answer, but is it possible for, like you said, for them to get to him because he did shoot something that he didn't know what it was? So do you think he's getting pressure from someplace else, or is he just kind of, the kind of person that torments animals?
Well, I don't even have to say, in my opinion, he was a poacher. He's been charged with poaching. So he already was an unethical hunter. And most likely he was poaching the day he shot the Bigfoot. I mean, you have to hear, basically his motivation, in my opinion, his name is Justin Smedja. His motivation was he was afraid that, he'd already, like I said, he'd already admitted he'd shot them. He'd already passed a polygraph test that he'd shot them. So if they come out to be human, he has major exposure here to a manslaughter charge.
He passed a polygraph test?
What?
He passed
a polygraph test. Yes, he did.
Who made him take the test?
He voluntarily took the test. It's in my book. I go into great detail about the test. And he passed the polygraph test.
Wow.
So, and he had a couple of friends, Bart Catino, and I'll think of the other guy's name in a minute. And they helped him, in my opinion, because these people are very Sioux happy. In my opinion, they helped him concoct a plan to discredit the study, so that, like I said, they could muddy the waters, discredit the study, so they could protect Justin from being prosecuted. And that part of that plan was, he'd already sent DNA to Melba, and she, when she got it, she wanted to make sure she had the real thing because he was making a claim. So not only did she wash and test it, but she also sent core samples and to an independent lab, and they verified it. And then she did electron microscopy of it, and then she sent it off to two different labs to and they verified each other. So she wanted, so she had Bigfoot flesh, no doubt about it. Whatever, he sent her Bigfoot flesh. And then what they wanted to do, what they did is they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to send off samples of bear meat contaminated with, we're just going to touch it and contaminate it. And, when those results come back, we can say, see, these are the same samples we sent Melba, and these other labs are saying, it's bear contaminated with human beings. So it must, Melba must be faking it. Melba is, a fraud. Now, the problem was, you remember I told you, we were in embargo. Mm-hmm. So they did all this while we were in embargo. So Melba couldn't say a thing. She couldn't defend herself. So they're running out there, and all the blogs are picking it up, and they're getting, and they're doing blog talk shows, and even some of the mainstream starts to pick it up that, Melba's a fraud. She's faked it, blah, blah, blah.
This guy's doing this?
In my opinion, I'm trying to, because these guys will sue me. If they think they can have a lawsuit, they have the backing from sources. I don't know whether it's federal government or other sources, and they will sue me.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, yes, that's what they did. And I think there's strong evidence I lay out in the book to back that up. But it's my opinion. And that, and you can read the book and decide for yourself. But so that's what was going on. I don't think, well, I know that Melba never had that conversation with him where she told him to destroy the samples. She already had her samples, and you know what I'm saying. And she was smart enough to split it up and give it to people she trusted in case there was a mysterious raid or a fire destroyed her place. Yeah. So I think that was that whole motivation. That's why all that was going on, and that was his motivation for lying. I think He got on some TV shows, and Dr. Sykes came and tested his boots. And of course they came back bare and everything. And there's some scientific. I don't want to get down into the nitty gritty, but in the book I explain scientifically how if you look at the two samples and the lab results from the two samples, it's scientifically impossible for what was given to Melba to be the same as what they claimed, and tested was bear. The alleles were different, the haplogroups were different. There were many, dissimilar things, from the samples. But at the time, Dr. Ketchum we were all under the embargo, so she couldn't rebut it. She couldn't say, "Here are my results. They're lying."
Yeah. Because
if she had, they had us between the eight ball. They could basically say whatever they wanted to, and we couldn't say a word back. Nobody could defend it.
So where are we in the process of being peer reviewed when she started taking these samples from him? Had it already begun?
Yeah, basically, Smedja sent her the sample. She was ready to go to peer review when she got the sample from Smedja. And it was because it was a piece of flesh, it was an opportunity you just couldn't pass up.
Okay. Scott, was there a lot of publicity on this? And would this guy have known, there's a study going on and I'm going to screw it? Would he have known?
No. When he first sent the sample off, he wanted, the word was already out. David and Melba had already gone on coast to coast and said we're doing a study and made a call for samples.
Okay.
So the cryptid community, those people listening to Coast, Bigfoot people were already looking. So yeah, he knew when he shot the Bigfoot. I don't want to get into too much detail, but basically he got a hold of a guy named Derek Randalls on a forum, and Derek Randalls was already on the team and said, "Hey," Derek Randalls was the Olympic Project, and he said, "Hey, I shot a Bigfoot," and so one thing led to another, and they went and retrieved, that whole story.
Yeah,
they claim they went back and retrieved it. I personally believe they've got a body or got pieces of a body somewhere, but that's beside the point. The point is they got a piece of flesh and they sent it to Dr. Ketchum to go into the study. There was, at that time, we didn't, since the results weren't being made public, Justin Smedja didn't know it was a human hybrid, okay? It was only after his piece of flesh was placed into the study and the study went to the journal Nature, and then the referee leaked that it was possibly a human hybrid. Then is when they heard that, and that's when the old poo moment happened for Justin Smedja. Uh-oh.
So
it's a human hybrid.
So that was his sample they leaked?
It wasn't his sample, but just the fact that the results of the study concluded that it was a human hybrid.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you can imagine you're sitting there thinking, I shot a human. Yeah. I admitted I shot a human. I went on many TV shows and said I shot a human. And then I passed a lie detector test and said I shot a human. That's major pucker factor. That's plenty, in my humble opinion, that's plenty of motivation to scuttle that study.
I have to wonder if maybe he's not the one that came to that conclusion, and that maybe somebody in the government or the Park Service came to that conclusion for him. But that's all. It's all speculation. So,
speculation. The background of his two associates.
Yeah.
The fact that they could be paid agents, but again, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I can't prove it, and I don't know. It's just my opinion.
Yeah.
You see how serious these guys are. I have to keep saying this.
Yep.
I'm serious. If they thought they could get a leg in and sue me for defamation, there'd be a process server in a week or two at my front door.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess I better watch what I say. So,
yeah.
All right.
That's what I'm saying. They're public figures. They meet the threshold of being a public figure.
Yeah.
But still, that doesn't mean they can't try.
Yeah. All right. So let's just close off this study and move on to some other topics here, Scott. So people, as you say, they scattered, and where are we? I mean, you're coming back, and you published in May, correct? You're the only one that published.
When you say published,
I mean, you published your book.
Yeah. As far as I know, I'm the only one that's published a book about the study.
Okay.
Hopefully one day Melba will write a book, but for now, I think that's just too painful for her.
Yes.
And I don't think she's very jaded, very guarded. She doesn't trust anybody. I mean, they took her livelihood. I mean, she lost her business. She's doing fine now, but you can imagine losing your business and losing your ability. She was an expert witness for the state of Texas.
Yep.
Of course, she lost that. They couldn't use her anymore because they could impeach her with, using the DNA study. So, what these people don't, maybe they do realize it. They destroyed someone's life over this.
Oh, and happily so. So. Yeah, I have no doubt that there are people that, and these are the people we probably see on the TV talking about this stuff, that were overjoyed to see her out of the picture. So, Melba, if you ever listen to this podcast, we hope you'll write a book, and I hope you'll help me. I hope you'll let me help you write it. All right. Well, Scott, let's move on here. You have got so much experience. Would you, I know most people listening to this or watching this on YouTube will know who you are, but for those 5 or 6 people that don't, would you describe your research method, your area, and what you're looking for?
Well, sure. I live in East Tennessee, and my research areas are the Great Smoky Mountains, and then there's a couple other areas that are, private little, well, they're not private, they're public land areas that I research on. Pretty much my research is as far, I proved what I wanted to prove. I still go out in the field. I still use a back trail camera, but I'm not actively trying to get hair samples. I'm not actively, I'm satisfied I know what they are, and that's why I wrote the book, The Nephilim Among Us. That's the culmination of my 10 years. Those are my conclusions based on my experience, DNA study, research and everything. That's at this moment is my conclusion. I'm always open to new facts and stuff. So, it's not the set in stone, you won't change my mind, but, based on what I know now, that book is my conclusion. But the methods I still currently use, like I said, is the back trail camera. And what people got to understand about what we call a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, they're not a dumb ape. They're not a bipedal ape. In my opinion, they're a human hybrid, and you've got to come to the realization that, that they're as smart as we are, if not smarter. They have abilities because they understand things that we don't understand. I'm convinced of that. They have knowledge we don't have. I think they understand the ether. I think they understand the Tesla type technologies, and I think they know how to use that. And some of this stuff that we call woo, I think comes from the ability. It's not really woo. It's just they have the knowledge that we don't have of how to access this stuff. They have will, intellect, motive. They're genetically diverse. And they're a people. And so they have their own native language, and then they have the cognitive ability to assimilate, understand English or whatever other languages around them. Sometimes they're depending on where they're at in the country, they'll kind of have a dialectic language that, has their language mixed with a little bit of whatever. If they're close to the Mexican border, there's Spanish and Creole thrown in it. There could be Navajo, and there could be Cherokee and English over here. And so just depending on where they're at. And they live in family groups and or clans. Best I can tell, it's kind of a loose-knit thing. They have a set of rules they live by. we really don't know what the rules are. I mean, we can make some educated guesses about the rules. Number one is don't ever get your picture taken. Number two, stay hidden. It's certain death if you're discovered. You can only show yourself to a woman or a child. If there's all these different little circumstances. Don't interact with human beings.
Don't trust Whitey. Oh,
Yeah.
That's from a movie.
Well, yeah,
right.
you just don't. It's interesting. My thing is, we know there's rule sets. Who makes the rules and who enforces the rules? That's something to ponder.
Okay, so let's stop right there now, Scott. You're making a lot of claims, and if I was to talk to the next Bigfoot researcher down the line, actually, I'm talking to my throat. I'm talking to Ron Moorhead tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Now, is Ron going to come and say, Matt, these Bigfoot, they have all of these capabilities. They speak all these languages. They have the ability to reason, et cetera, et cetera. Is this something agreed on, or how did you arrive at these conclusions?
Well, I arrived at the conclusions based on all my research and experiences, from the fact that I saw them use language. I had experiences where there was one experience where I purposely was in English bad-mouthing them, literally, and saying some not very kind things about them. And I actually had a friend with me, Greg Graddix. And as we were walking out, and I'm making boasts and I'm making slurs towards them and belittling them, I got hit with the best that you could. Everybody calls it, I got shocked. I got zapped. It's called being zapped. And I mean, it hurt. It was like electricity hit me in this arm, ran across my chest and out the other side. And the guy that was with me, I said, "Did you?" And it addled me. I almost fell to the ground. And I said, did that hit you? And he said, no, but I heard a whoosh go by my face. And he had a digital voice recorder. He had it on. And when he got back home, he played it back. And of course, you could hear me talking. And at the moment that I got hit by this zapping, there was a crackle on and the next morning when I got up, in the morning you have to go urinate, there was blood in my urine. And so I called Greg up, or I messaged Greg, and I said, I know this is weird and kind of personal, but did you have blood in your urine this morning? He said, oh my God, yes, I did. So, I had the physical effects the day of. We had, I was speaking and I was talking negatively about him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I made one of them mad, mm-hmm. and he took the appropriate action. Mm-hmm. So, that's just one example. You say, well, how do you know this? So it takes what does it take to do that? It takes will and intellect. You got to have emotions. You got to be able to understand what I'm saying. You've got to be able to be made mad, upset. You have to have feelings, right? Well, it's a dumb animal that doesn't care. If he can't understand me, why would he zap me at the moment that I'm doing this? And if you say, oh, it's just a coincidence, well, I'm not. I don't believe. I'm one of these guys. I don't believe in coincidences. Just don't.
Okay.
But that's just. That's just one of many. It's in my book, but that's just one of many. That's an example. Let's say of that and the accumulation of these things throughout the 5, 6, 7 years. It brought me to this realization that this the DNA study and the fact that they're a human hybrid. I just didn't pull this and make that statement flippantly just because that's what I think,
right.
feel.
Well, Scott, you had encounters when you were a kid, right? I mean, you've been having these all your life. So as somebody like me, I've never seen one. I don't know anything about them, but you've had them around you most of your life, correct?
Yeah.
So you would have a relationship with them and you would know a lot more than most people would.
Yeah. And back to Ron Moorhead, I'm in his camp as far as what, a lot of the stuff that he puts forward. Of course, I believe they're a Nephilim, which, is a fallen angel human hybrid. And they're actually the descendants of that. And so, and that gives, you know, and an angel is a what? An interdimensional being, right? And so, you know, and that genetically gives them some abilities we just don't have. And,
all right. So, Scott, I don't want to, I'm not going to let you run away.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. I was just saying.
Nephilim tangent, and I'll tell you why. And my view on it is I have no doubt that what you're saying is correct. The only problem I have with it is the use of words. The vocabulary to describe, I don't know exactly what a Nephilim it would have meant in Hebrew back, you know, in 1200 BC or whatever when they were writing the Old Testament. I don't know what exactly those things were, and that's a lot of the problems I have with using the Bible as science. Is that there's a problem with language. The people interpreting and writing down the things that happened before, they translated from ancient Hebrew and then it was into like Aramaic and all these other languages, Greek, German, and then Latin, and then finally into English. So I like to look for confirmation in other places. So your Nephilim thing, I respect that, but I don't see like let's take Goliath. Was Goliath? Do you think he was one of these things?
Mm-hmm.
You think he was a Bigfoot? What
well,
about?
I think he was. I think he.
What
well,
about
the word Nephal, because I go deeper than just accepting it. I go all the way back to the concordance and go back to the original meaning and go to the Hebrew and then go back to the meanings and the root words. Mm-hmm. Nephal means the fallen ones, the earthbound ones. That was what, and another word used for them is Gibberim, the mighty ones. You know, so there's a collection of different words that got translated, but you know, in other words, the Nephilim means the fallen ones,
right?
Or
but
you know,
but you have like the Titan
ones. They're actually considered lower than human beings mm-hmm. because God didn't create them. In other words, God forbid. God said, "I'm the creator," and the fallen angel said, "No, we want to create. So we're going to have offspring." Well, they created a being that didn't have a God-inspired soul. You know, God, because they went, you know, and took a woman and infused their DNA and had offspring. Mm-hmm. So that's you know, so I do believe that. And whether you want to, you know, so that's why I think Goliath in the Bible says he was a Nephilim, he was a giant, you know. So
okay, and the only reason I would argue that is that Greek mythology, you have the Titans, you know. So
that was their version of what happened, you know.
But not
the version of the fallen angels.
Well, I don't want to say anything about Italians, but they're not hairy beasts. I mean. The accounts of them would have said that they were
not all Bigfoot are completely covered in hair, and there's also, you know, genetic diversity, and we have the ability genetically for certain traits, proteins to turn certain traits on and off.
Yeah,
and so I mean, I've got in my book an example of a boy, a documented example who in the 90s his village was in South America was attacked, you know, in a civil war, and this little boy about 9 or 10 years old fled into he fled into the jungle. Well, they found him a couple years later, accidentally, and he had grown hair all over his body, and he was living with a group of monkeys, and the natives, you know, saw this group of monkeys, and they saw this one monkey that didn't look right, and they realized it was a human-looking thing with hair all over its body. Now, you know, it had only been a couple of years, so the boy could still speak and everything. So they were able to, you know, speak to the boy, get the boy to come to the village. And then they got the boy down and they shaved all his hair off, and he started living again amongst the villagers, and the hair growth ceased. And so a French scientist heard about this story, went there and, interviewed the boy, interviewed the people that found the boy, and verified the story. And when they asked, well, how did this happen? She said, well, we could genetically, these markers, these genetic traits could be turned off and on. The boy needed to grow hair. He had, the protein marker got turned on and he grew hair. Once he came back into civilization, there was no more need for hair. The protein marker got turned off. So, if you're forced to live in the wilderness and you're exposed to the elements, and we know they already have unique DNA to begin with, they may be genetically, predisposed to be able to grow hair in order to be able to stand the elements. That's not any my theory, but I mean it's more than possible.
Yeah, if in fact this is true, then I would just have to say that it probably would be possible with a child, because the child's not fully grown. I would wonder if an adult would be able to change that way. But definitely an interesting story. All right. Well, let's go into a little kind of a different tack here, and that is, Scott, you've got an amazing YouTube channel, and you've got some. I mean, you're out there by yourself, and you're having encounters with Bigfoots. I've seen your portal video. I've seen this predator-like thing show up. And so you're out there what is going on in that area? Is there a history of native bad things, or what's going on with that area?
Well, my area is actually what used to be known as Chota, which was the capital for probably 1,000 years of the Cherokees. So you've got that. Some of the areas that I'm in have cemeteries near them. So you've got all this paranormal stuff, and it's some of this stuff's just odd or weird. I have this one little place I joke it's my own little Skinwalker Ranch. If you know the reference to the book. It's just this one area. There's a whale in the area. For some reason, whales, holes in the ground, especially old abandoned whales, seem to have, for what I can't explain it. All I can tell you is it seems to be, there's some of this weird energy stuff, craziness goes on. I can't explain it. All now I'm doing is documenting. I go out there with a camera and these things show up. And so, yeah, but it's, it's all part and parcel of this research thing. It's like, it's a progression. It seems to happen to most researchers. You start off looking for Bigfoot, and then if you're really serious about it, 2 or 3 years into it, these other things start happening. The other cryptids show up. The Dogman shows up. Orbs, start happening. They start, the Bigfoot start following you to your house and leaving footprints or slapping the side of your house, things that don't make any sense. You're like, how did they find me to begin with, and so forth and so on. And then, I've had a UFO sighting near my house. I don't know if it's related, but, first UFO sighting I ever had, I didn't really have one until I started, getting into the Bigfoot thing. So, all these different weird things just start happening. And if you talk to researchers that will be truthful with you, a lot of them suppress it. And since it's too far out there, they'll ignore it. But if they'll be honest, I'd say the majority, that's the progression. Bigfoot, other cryptids, and then supernatural weird stuff starts happening. All
right. So that means we got to jump right into Mr. Dogman, because on the Campers USA, we do UFOs, we do aliens, Bigfoot, and Dogman. So you've got a really interesting video with, you've got I guess that's a GoPro on your back, or filming behind you, and there is some freaky thing that really looks like a huge German Shepherd kind of eyeballing you, and it's got something on its back. I don't want to. I know you've talked into ad nauseum about how you got the footage and all that. So I don't want you to ask you to do that. But watch Scott Carpenter's YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it yet, watch his Dogman video. That thing on that Dogman's back does not look like a Dogman. It looks like an ape. So I'm wondering if that thing didn't pick that thing up, it's going to eat it.
I don't know. The little thing was moving its mouth and acted like it was talking to the Dogman. So, I mean, it was like hanging on to the side of its head, up on its shoulder, like right here. So, I can't say it was going to eat it, and I can't say he wasn't going to eat it. I will say this, since I've had a couple of local people from that area, Madisonville, get in contact with me who saw the video and said, yeah, we got those Dogman things running around here. They call them flatheads. It's because they kind of got a wide flat head, and instead of more of a German Shepherd or skinny snout, they've got more of a pig flat snout. Like that one has, the snout's flat. And I said, can you tell me what is that little thing on its shoulder? And the guy told me it was called, he called it an apple sprite. And I said, an apple sprite. I said, okay, what's an apple sprite? He said, well, it's a little creature about 12, 14 inches tall. They're usually silver-haired with tan skin like people. He said they like to eat apples, and they have a really mean disposition. And if one's in an apple tree and you walk by, he'll start throwing apples at you and screaming at you. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So that's the only explanation I've ever gotten from anybody about what that thing is. And, and I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that's what one of the locals called it. Weird.
Okay, and how tall are these things?
He told me they were about 12 to 14 inches.
Yeah, okay, so I'm talking to Rich Germeau. We're up here in Washington, and he was talking about one of the rangers, or the head of the Olympic National Park ranger, and he was camping out, and he heard Bigfoot noises, and he had all these little footprints around his thing, and I said, stop, that's it. I don't want to go into that. This Bigfoot thing is enough. But yeah, that's crazy stuff. So, and this guy just said it just like that, just like it's nothing.
Yeah, like it's nothing. Oh yeah, those are apple sprites.
Well, Scott, I've heard you make a lot of good points, and one of the points you make is that people from your area, when they talk about Bigfoot or whatever, they don't really talk with people about it, because the people who know, and the people who don't know, they're just gonna, act kind of weird about it and laugh or whatever. And so you guys down there in your neck of the woods just kind of keep it to yourself, right?
Pretty much. I mean, of course, I do the research and stuff, but all the locals, if you go down to Madisonville or any of these local counties around me, anywhere out in the country, so to speak, just to use, local term, most people have at least seen one and know they exist, and they don't want to be made fun of. You know what I'm saying? And so they just keep to themselves, and they don't want the publicity. I mean, when the Janice Carter thing and the Carter farm was going on, those people down in Madisonville were livid. They didn't want people running around down there. They didn't want they didn't want all this publicity. They just wanted to be left alone to live their lives. And so, so they wouldn't even talk about it. But everybody down there has got one or two Bigfoot stories. Some people, these things have, killed livestock, killed cows. It's just something, it's just part of it. It's like in some areas of the country, you got to deal with grizzly bears and, mountain lions. And in this area of the country, you got to deal from time to time, Bigfoot's going to kill a goat. This is what he's going to do. If you're going to farm, and live there, you're just going to have to deal with it. He's going to go in a couple times a year and kill a couple chickens. And, he may bang on the side of your house and, rattle things up, leave a couple footprints. That sort of thing.
Okay, so talk to me about the relationship between Dogman and Bigfoot. Are they compatible or are they enemies?
That's a good question. I don't have enough data or information to say one way or another. My experience was I was researching in an area. The Dogman showed up. I was Bigfoot researching. I wasn't dog. I've never been, quote, a dogman researcher. They just showed up. Okay. I mean, I've never really gone out and said, I'm going to find a dogman. I've always been Bigfoot researching in that point, but they showed up in this area where I'd established a feeding station.
Yep.
And when they showed up at this feeding station area, the Bigfoot, they didn't move far, maybe less than a quarter of a mile, but they kind of got away from that area. And I had to go a little bit of, in the same area, probably a quarter of a mile away, I established another feeding station. And sure enough, the Bigfoot started showing back up to this feeding station. But that place where the Dogman kind of took over was never the same. They never went back there. That's where I started getting like alien-like stuff on the trail cameras. This weird, the weird stuff started happening over there, this craziness. And, all that, you can almost call it that, the supernatural demonic stuff started happening where the Dogman showed up.
Yeah,
so,
and Scott, I have to ask you this. Like I said at the beginning, I listened to, the Sasquatch Chronicles, and I listened to Dogman Radio, and it seems to me there's a lot of people out there that are running into these things.
mm-hmm.
So I'd never even heard of a Dogman before, like 6 months ago. Are these, and I've heard you talking about portals, right? And being associated with these things. Is it possible that based on the things we're doing, I mean, look at urban sprawl, look at the way, our international relations, look at our politics, look at just how people are. I mean, people are just nasty now, and you wonder what happened to people. But do you think that Dogman, and this is a crazy question, is a consequence of something we're doing?
That's a hard question. I don't know if we're causing it or it's just.
But they're coming through portals, right? You've seen that. Is that
well?
correct?
Yeah. Well, I've not seen a Dogman come through a portal. I've seen a portal open, and I've got that back trail of that portal where those two weird things are. Okay. One thing looks like a Bigfoot, the other thing looks.
I guess I'm going back to Skinwalker.
Yeah, right? Yeah, the Skinwalker. Now, the scientist that worked on that ranch saw a Dogman crawl up a portal. Yes, I've not seen a Dogman crawl up a portal. Do they? So I can't answer. Do they come out of portals?
Okay.
I mean, there's some sort of bipedal canine creature. Obviously there's some genetic manipulation there, and or there have been a species that's been around for a long time. If you want to go all the way back to Egypt and Anubis, he was a dog-headed god, right?
Right.
So with a human body dog head, and these things are built strange in the fact that they can go on all fours, but like when they stand up, their torso's more human looking than canine looking. And, they're not, a canine has like a rounded barrel chest. These things have a chest like ours, or the one that I saw. I've actually seen one, a week later, and its chest was more, its torso was like humans, and its upper arm was like a human's. And then when it got down to its arms here, instead of a hand, it had claws, kind of very similar to what a raccoon would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't really see. I saw its waistline. I didn't really see its legs. But I've heard other people talk about how their legs kind of look like human too. You know what I'm saying? Have more of a human look to them. And then they have this the tracks I found, they're weird because, I've found 3 and 4 tracks.
I saw those.
And they got like a heel. It's like take a human foot and cut it off at the very end and put a dog pad on it.
Mm-hmm.
But they have this elongated back pad that kind of looks like a small foot. That's what it looks like. It may not be. It may just be a pad, just an elongated pad. But it, what I'm saying, it has more of a, it's a long foot. The ones I saw about that long.
Yep.
So about 6-8 inches long. But on the end of it, it has the claws. But and I've never seen one run, so I can't speak to that. Just the witnesses have seen them run on 2 legs and seen them go down on all 4s. Of course, they've seen Bigfoot do the same thing.
So you're talking about the Bigfoots will come and eat a goat, whatever. But these things, these dogmen, I mean, I know they don't normally eat people, but they do. And they also, like Bigfoot, are a suspect in the disappearance of people. So do you and I'm just going to say this, that if there weren't for the accounts from the 1800s and 1700s from Native Americans about these dogmen, I would think they were genetic experiments. Do you know about the chupacabra?
Mm-hmm.
Well, people have said the chupacabra, like these remote viewers, and we're going to talk about remote viewing in a second, but a remote viewer said the chupacabra it's a genetic experiment that they let out. It's just like see what it would do, and so that's the story behind that. I don't think that this thing is a genetic experiment, at least not from our time. But it sure sounds like one. It's a raccoon, it's a man, it's a wolf, it's all these things. So maybe it's somebody's genetic experiment.
Yeah, it could be somebody's. And I think, if you keep up with what's going on, what DARPA's doing and what other scientists are doing, you got the chipper technology now, the ability to start making things is coming.
Yep.
Back a few thousand years ago, you had all these chimeras. You had this, obviously someone was blending a horse with a human and lion men, and you had all these different, goat men and all these different mixtures. Well, apparently it seems like we're regaining that technology. And so, I'm at the point right now where I think there's some of these things that have existed for, a couple thousand years. And then I think, those people who have the motives or want to do it, DARPA or whatever, are also experimenting with these things and making their own, so to speak. So you may have a little bit of a hodgepodge now going on out there where some of these are, are more natural or, or been around for a while, and some of them are more modern, tinkering with the DNA. Mm-hmm. You can't say, I can't 100% say, the same thing with the Bigfoot. There was, like I said, Melba saw, what looked like some genetic manipulation going on. So who did the manipulation? I mean, of course, a lot of people, ancient alien people, would say, well, the ETs came here and screwed with the genome, and that's where they came from. So.
Well, Scott, I think we're getting. I know it's late there. It's like 10 o'clock. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to close this off, but I'm going to throw this back at you just to give you nightmares if you're not going to have them already. But I interviewed Ed Dames, the remote viewer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know who Ed is?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Okay. So I asked him about Bigfoot, and I got to have him back on here because I was just talking about his books before, but he says Bigfoot is not from here. And he says, I'm on my way to go see a Bigfoot. He was going to go have an encounter. And I don't know if that was remote viewing it, but he was on his way to go see a Bigfoot. So I got to find out what happened to him. But Ed Dames, the Army's lead remote viewer, says that the Bigfoots are not from here. So where does that come from? And if you want my worthless advice or my opinion, I believe that the Bigfoot and the Dogman are just from the Ice Age, like with the woolly mammoth, and that was just a time where those creatures existed. And I think that somehow our times are running together, and that they're able to cross between the two. And Scott, let me ask you this last question before you go. And if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I'm sure you don't. But like when I was investigating Rich Germo's encounter on Harstein Island, he said they are there for like 3 months, and then they go someplace else. Where did they go? And how did they get there? Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I personally think they do migrate around.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, I think they live underground in caves. I mean, there are all kinds of cave systems in East Tennessee. I mean, we're just one big cave, and you know, hiding a cave entrance wouldn't be that big a deal. And so, you know, I personally think they have a range. They move around that range, depending on, you know, the food sources and you know, other factors. You know, maybe social factors or whatever. And then they spend a lot, some or not a lot of times, you know, underground or hiding.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard. Remember, it's not hard to hide if nobody's looking for you. Number one, there's a lot more wilderness than people think. Everybody says, "Oh, you know, we're urban sprawl," and I don't discount there's urban sprawl, but I mean, if you've ever flown across the country, there's miles and miles and miles of nothing. I mean, you know, I've got a national park up here and all this acreage, you know, nothing. I mean, you know, when you actually get up and you fly around, we're human beings. We all gather in cities, and we may sprawl out a little bit. But I think the whole population of the world could fit in Texas on a 1 acre lot. So, you know, I think there's a lot more places to hide than we believe there is. And I think, you know, because we buy into this that we're running the world and we're sprawling and destroying nature. But you know, I think there's a lot more places to hide, and if no one's looking for you, it's very easy to hide. It's not hard. That's my opinion.
Can I throw one more question in, Scott, and then I'll let you go?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. I saw a video on YouTube. A guy had a Bigfoot hand. Don't laugh at me if this is a joke. I don't know, but he had a Bigfoot hand, like from a juvenile, but it was magnetic. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. But
well, I would check that out. I don't know what the guy's name was or anything, but he had a Bigfoot hand that he held onto the blade of a shovel and it stuck to it. And if these Bigfoot have something in their body, I mean, that explains their weight. If they have something super dense, a super dense mineral that they, like we have iron and zinc and whatever in our body, if those Bigfoot have something in, if they're like magnetic, they can interact in these boulder fields. They can interact with their environment, and I'll bet you they can turn invisible or at least get light to not reflect off of them. So that would go, if these things have some kind of magnetic properties, that would go a long way to explain some of their capabilities.
Sure would. Like I said, I think like I said earlier, I think they have knowledge and abilities, you know, that we don't have, and they have an understanding that we don't have. It's not magic. It's just, like I said, if you really want to see some wild things, study what Tesla was doing. And some of the things that Tesla did, when you read some of these accounts of what Bigfoot do, like levitation, visibility, these orbs floating around them, you look at some of the Tesla effects, they're similar. It's interesting. It's food for thought. You see similarities. You see these phenomena have similarities. Let's say that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes it all exciting. And if it was just an ape out running around the woods, I don't think any of us would be doing this. So,
let's be honest. If there's an ape running around the woods, even if it was smart bipedal ape, we'd already captured him. You know what I'm saying?
We'd already shot it, like that Justin guy. Well, Scott, I cannot thank you enough, and you're going to have to come back and see us on.
Sure, I'll be glad to.
USA, because we haven't talked about Politis. Do you talk to Mr. Politis at all, or?
David talked about David. Yeah, we can talk about David. We're friends. We communicate.
Well, I just like to go over his 411 stuff the next time you're on the show. But you just need to get.
I've gone out. Yeah, I've gone out on investigations with him.
Wow.
On the 411 deal. So yeah.
Wow. If you talk to him, tell him I'm disappointed. I hear him, poo-pooing all these people that bring up Bigfoot, and he's been hunting them the whole time. So I guess that's the Greek philosopher teaching method of making the student come to their own truth. All right, well, Scott, let's do it very quickly. Your books are The Nephilim, Among Us, The Identity and Origin of Sasquatch and Other Mysterious Creatures, and this is the one with the pictures in it.
Mm-hmm.
Dogman, The Monsters Are Real, The Bigfoot Field Journal, the written and photographic record of an amateur Bigfoot researcher, and finally, your latest book, Truth Denied, The Sasquatch DNA Study. Get those books, you guys. This Scott is just a fantastic guy and does a lot of really good research and stuff. So get out and get his books. So, Scott, thanks for being on Encounters USA.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it and hope you'll have me back. I really had a good time.
Oh, I absolutely will. All right, you guys. Now, we've had Scott on here, so I want you to be just like Scott, because he goes around with that GoPro on his back. So what do we say at Encounters USA? When you're out in the woods, especially if you're with Scott Carpenter, always watch your back.
Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Please remember, if you've had an encounter, we want to hear about it. Go ahead and email us at encountersusa1@gmail.com or contact us at encountersusa.com, our website, and go to the contact form. All right, everybody. Until next time, be careful out there. And if you're out in the woods, watch your back.